Here's a look at inside of the Ariana Grande performing before the explosion happened. This morning, she has suspended her world tour. She was scheduled to perform in London later this week. The 23-year-old singer was reportedly in hysterics after the attack. And at the concert, she sent out this tweet saying, quote, "Broken from the bottom of my heart. I'm so sorry. I don't have words." Grande was not hurt in the attack. Megan?
Now, even as new details are still being released about last night's attack, many questions still remain. Dr. Glen Duerr from Cedarville University, professor of international relations, is here to help us sort through this still developing story. Thanks so much for coming in this morning. We sure appreciate it. You have your citizenship in Great Britain as well, and we were talking a little bit during the break. You're also familiar with this area and even have family close by. When you heard this news last night, what was your reaction?
It's absolutely devastating. It's the worst terrorist attack on UK soil since 2005. And when you think of the heinous nature of attacking preteen and teenage kids, they're always going to be innocent.
What do you think that says? Because we're, again, just hearing right now that ISIS is claiming responsibility. But this attack seems different in the fact that it was targeting young people.
Yes, there are a lot of parallels with the Bataclan attack in Paris in November of 2015. Certainly a very high death toll. When you look at the MO, the suicide bombing on a soft target, very, very difficult to stop. And then also attempting to influence politics. An election coming up on June 8th. The polls are narrowing. There's a lot that could change here.
A lot that could change as well. We heard from President Trump this morning, as you just heard, calling the attackers losers. What do you think of that, and how do you think that this attack could change his week ahead as he's traveling abroad? Sure.
He's certainly trying to frame the terrorists in a certain manner by calling them losers. They may take it as a moniker that they're Trump's losers. They're certainly looking to tangle with President Trump and the wider West, and so they might be looking at this as a badge of honor. But hopefully it will also have the impact of trying to put the ISIS attackers in a box and to try and really narrow it down and try and stop these types of attacks.
And meanwhile, I think Prime Minister Theresa May kind of had that same message this morning, trying to ease people's concerns, restore a sense of safety, again reflecting on last night, saying we saw the worst of humanity, but we also saw the best. What did you think of her statements this morning?
Certainly it was a very strong and good statement, trying to encourage people to work together. Twitter was used widely, various hashtags of trying to help people. That was all very good in terms of bringing people together. But she's in the midst of a very, very difficult election period. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, is narrowing in the polls. It's becoming quite contentious, and so she has to show that strong leadership. I saw signs of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher in her there in terms of stepping back against IRA terrorism when I was growing up in the United Kingdom in the 1980s, and so I see a lot of parallels there in terms of her statements.
Do you think that this could influence the future of the election?
It certainly could. It's still a ways out to the June 8th election, but as I noted, the Conservative Party had a very strong lead. It's beginning to narrow. We will certainly see what happens because UKIP, a kind of right-of-centre, far-right party, has really been lessening in the polls. They could come back because they've taken a very strong stance on terrorism. But it would be interesting to see now between Labour and Conservatives, because one of the two will likely lead the future government.
Going back to this ISIS now claiming responsibility, do you think that this is a kind of attack that we will start to see more of? Because it's no longer these mass, large settings. We're starting to see younger people and more targeted attacks.
Yeah, the younger people, that will certainly hurt ISIS because there's no good that comes from it. I mean, regardless of any way that they spin the argument, hurting young kids will always be denounced, even amongst their own following. So I think this could have a very negative impact on ISIS. But the type of attack on a soft target, like an arena, we've seen it in Paris, we've seen it in Manchester now, different types of attacks, they're certainly becoming more prominent if we think of motorized vehicles in Nice and in Columbus and in London, attacks on concert halls like in Paris and Manchester. These are the types of things we need to watch out for.
Well, the fact that the device wasn't actually taken inside the arena, they waited outside until the concert was letting out. Is that something that you think that we'll start seeing more security outside arenas as well?
Yes, especially when it comes to transportation hubs, because what you have with the Manchester Arena is it directly kind of spills out into Victoria Station, which is a major hub station to take passengers elsewhere in the UK. And so where you see those types of combinations, it's very difficult. We saw that in Belgium in March of 2016 with the Maalbeek station right at the mouth of the European Commission building. And so these are the types of areas where law enforcement will really need a larger presence.
And quickly, how do we begin moving past this and start to restore that sense of security? Because this is something that I think is going to scare a lot of people for a long time.
It certainly will, because even though the British people have a long history of dealing with terrorism, like I said, the IRA in the 70s and 80s, particularly very bad, with Manchester and London this year, it's a big uptick since 2005 when Al-Qaeda hit the 7/7 attacks on the double-decker buses in London. So the British people have not really experienced this type of terrorism recently, and so we'll really need to kind of rethink terrorist and counterterrorism strategies.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Glen Duerr from Cedarville University. We sure appreciate your insight again on this still developing story.